You're watching TVO. Yo.
These are involved in making decisions more and more.
This is TVO.
Greetings, prisoners of gravity. This is Commander Rick cutting in with a comics quiz. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster are famous for co-creating Superman. Bob Kane is known for Batman. But who created or co-created Captain America, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the Mighty Thor, Commandy, the Demon, the Forever People, Nick Fury, the New Gods, Mr. Miracle, and dozens of others? One man, Jack Kirby. There's more. Working in the 40s with writer Joe Simon, he created the genre of romance comics. In the 50s, he co-created the very first horror comic and wrote hundreds of Western comics. In the 60s, working with Stan Lee at Marvel, Jack's art style, his characters, and his storytelling techniques defined superheroes. Any of these accomplishments would ensure a place of honor in the history of graphic storytelling. Taken together, well, Jack should be as famous as Walt Disney. But because he lacks the flair for self-promotion of, say, his longtime collaborator Stan Lee, Jack Kirby is not a household name. We're going to help change that. Roll it, Nancy.
Rising anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe has voted English-only sign. 40,000 tons of armed with PCBs blew up the ozone layer today.
Standing by for solid rocket booster separation.
Jack, why did you become a cartoonist?
I decided to become a cartoonist because I discovered comics all by myself. I was born in the Lower East Side of New York in a very restricted area, really, and I just began to draw at a very, very young age, but it looked like I was marking up the tenement floor. But I took to that sort of thing and kept on with it until I drew more complicated forms. And gradually I found my way to Atlas Comics, which later became Marvel.
And why were you so drawn to the superhero form?
Well, the superhero form is, I think it's something, the superhero form I think is a feeling more than a drawing. And I like people naturally, and I see people larger than life because that's the only way I can draw them. And superheroes came very naturally to me because that particular form of drawing seemed to represent my ideal of what I liked about men and women in generally.
These days, we take so many of these standard elements of superheroes for granted, but back in the early 40s when you were getting started, the medium was in its infancy. And one of the things that you helped establish was the concept of the superhero's alter ego. Why did you decide your characters should have two sides to their personalities?
Well, because we all do. We all dream. Yes, we We act realistically, but we dream beyond that reality. And our dreams make us larger. We all want to be larger, and we all want to see what's beyond all horizons. I believe it's part of the human makeup, and I reflect that in my drawings.
What for you is the most important element in telling a story in comics?
The most important thing about telling the story is telling the story. In other words, to be understood, to let the other person know what the story is all about, what the story represents, whether it has a moral or not. The other person, if he understands my story, he'll understand all those various facets of it. So I try to tell a story fully rounded, and I believe that I've succeeded in that. If you read my comics, you'll find that between the beginning and the end, there were all sorts of happenings, a variety of happenings, and that's how life is.
Right. But how do you lay that out on the page in order to give it maximum impact?
Well, I gave it maximum impact. I gave it all the power I had in my own self. Mm-hmm. And my heroes didn't merely walk, they ran. They had long strides. They were, like I said, they represented power, the power of the individual. I've always worshipped the individual because I felt that each individual has value. In giving value to other individuals, I give value to myself. And of course, that's self-satisfaction. I've lived my life that way, and I've been happiest that way.
It's not just the high quality of Jack's work that's astounding, it's the sheer quantity. Nancy, pick a year, any year at all. What a coincidence, that's the year I researched. In 1964, Jack drew 12 classic issues of the Fantastic Four, a 48-page annual, 8 issues of the Avengers, 6 issues of X-Men, 178 pages of Thor, 25 for Tales of Asgard, 3 10-page stories for Captain America, 5 issues of Sergeant Fury, over 100 covers, and a heap of extra images for promotion. About 1,100 pages total. Figuring on 250 working days in a year, that's over 4 pages a day, every day. As comic book writer Mark Evanier noted, even if the stuff stunk, that's impressive. But every page was different and exciting. Small wonder that Jack's work continues to inspire others.
What kind of an impact did Jack Kirby's work have on you?
I imagine the same impact it had on everybody. Jack's had his 75th birthday just a week or two ago. We were at the party for him. We were invited, and much of the latter part of the evening was spent by all of the people at the party, Neil Adams and Frank Miller, all sorts of folks getting up Bill Stout and telling Jack what he had meant to all of us. And it is amazing. I mean, the king of comics sounds like a glib line, but he really is. Here's a man who's had an impact on the industry for 5 decades. Every decade, he was responsible for something that formed the way the industry went in those 10 years. There's no one else who can even come close to saying that sort of thing. Jack he is comics. He defined power, he defined imagination. I don't think anyone else will ever come close.
Jack Kirby was, without a doubt, probably the singularly most important person in my developing the love of comic books. Dynamic storytelling, just the way he made things come alive and pop off the page is what made me start drawing comic books. I mean, you look at, my mother saved all this stuff, but you look at all the early work that I had, and it was all like Kirby rip-off stuff, with all that abstract, blocky pieces of this and that, and the hugely exaggerated muscles and all these other things, and that's all my early work, and that sort of led into so many other things. But he's my hero. He's a real-life hero to me.
He's a true comic artist in that he writes in pictures, as it were. His shorthand is pictures. And I mean, I understand when he was working on a story, that he would probably draw a page as quickly as most people would write it, you know, without inhibition, flowing straight from his intuition and the very base levels of his mind straight onto the paper, which is a trick that not many people can do. And I was lucky enough to be asked to ink a Kirby thing, not on the original pencils, but on an overlay. And Kirby's pictures look very simple. They look, you know, they're just simple, they're just obvious. They're like, you know, a natural phenomenon. But if you come to ink them, they're very hard to ink because you can't fudge them. You can't sort of draw an approximate line and then add a bit of rendering and then thicken it up a bit. You've got to get that line. You've got to hit the beat. And if you don't hit it, the drawing just falls to pieces. I doubt that comics will ever see his like again because, I mean, he was there at the ground floor and he influenced a generation and, you know, I mean, he is the king. I mean, there is no doubt about it.
In 1941, a scrawny draft board reject named Steve Rogers was injected with a secret serum and transformed into Captain America, the patriotic superhero. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7th that year, Cap leapt into the fray fist first. When Hitler finally fell and Japan surrendered, Captain America fought in the Cold War until 1949, when the ultimate weapon was mothballed. And then, in 1964, in Avengers #4, he reappeared. This new Captain America personified a subtler kind of patriotism. When you originally created Captain America, what were you going for? What were you hoping to do with that character?
Well, I was a very patriotic sort, and as with Joe Simon, my partner, and together we created Captain America because that was the climate of the times. I mean, Hitler was seizing everything in sight in Europe, and they were very, very troubled times, and you could feel it here in America. So we had a natural villain and natural heroes. Our heroes were American, and we had that American feeling. And from these feelings came the heroes that we thought would solve our problems.
Right. In much more peaceful times, in the early 60s, you created hundreds of heroes to populate the Marvel Universe. My personal favorites are the Fantastic Four. What did that super team represent for you?
The Fantastic Four were, well, they were the teens. They were the young people.
Right.
I love young people. I love teenagers. And you'll find that the Fantastic Four represent that group in many, many ways. They're very vital, and they're very active. And the teens certainly are in that category. So the Fantastic Four was my admiration for young people.
Right. Well, you covered all the bases. You had Reed Richards, a.k.a. Mr. Fantastic. He was the straight-class president type. Sue Storm, Invisible Girl, was the liberated lady. Her brother Johnny Storm was the preppy quarterback type. And Ben Grimm, the Thing, had that teenage complexion. He was kind of the gruff rebel, or what was he exactly?
Well, the Thing was really myself. If you'll notice the way the Thing talks and acts, you'll find that the Thing is really Jack Kirby. He has my manners. He has my manner of speech. And he thinks the way I do. He's excitable, and you'll find that he's very, very active among people, and he can muscle his way through a crowd. And I find that I'm that sort of person.
Backtracking for a moment, in the early 40s, Kirby worked for two other comic greats, Jerry Iger and Will Eisner, at the Iger-Eisner Studios. A while back, I asked Will if he remembered any amusing stories from those early days in New York. He did.
He thought of himself as a kind of a heroic person. I remember we were in an office building, and there was a towel service we got every day. They brought in a towel service. We had 10 or 15 artists working, so it was important. We were a fairly good customer. We got something like 10 towels or 12 towels, 15 towels, and we were a fairly good customer. The towel service, unbeknownst to me, however, was handled by the mafia. It was a controlled service. There were no competitors. Anyway, Iger got angry for some reason. He felt that we weren't getting enough soap or something like that, and he said, let's go to another towel service. And so he called up another towel service, and we got a visit that afternoon from a guy with the classic stereotype, a dark shirt and a white tie, a pork pie hat, kind of creased face, looked like a truck had run over the face. And he came in and said, now, you really don't want to make any trouble. I mean, really, we have this building. Anyway, he was standing there, and it looked pretty thin. And Jack was sitting in the room, in the back room. In the back room, you could see the front office. Front office was a little ante-room in the back room. And he came out and he says, hey, is this guy giving you any trouble? Jack, you got to remember, was something like 5 feet 1 inch, and this guy was 6 feet 4 inches tall, towered over me, and I towered over Jack. And Jack was going to lay him out. And I grabbed Jack by the back and said, hey, cool it, Jack. We don't want to get any trouble. This guy got the hood got a little nervous. I mean, Jack was so fierce that he backed off. Didn't solve anything. We still use their towel service, but that was what I always remember about Jack.
What prompted you to reinvent Thor for the comics in '62?
Well, I knew the Thor legends very well, but I wanted to modernize them. I felt that might be a new thing for comics, taking the old legend and modernizing them. And I believe I accomplished that.
What is it about ancient heroes like Thor that make them so enduring and relevant today?
Well, the heroes represent the wholesome part of society. Society has a wholesome side and it has a downside. We know where those facets lie. They're common to all of us. And if we want to be our wholesome selves, then we'll stick with legends like Thor and Odin.
In addition to those two, you've created a host of other characters who are either gods or are godlike. I'm thinking of the New Gods, Galactus the World Eater, and Silver Surfer, Galactus's alien messenger. Why are you so fascinated by gods?
We all have a kind of feeling, I think, that we've had for thousands of years, that there are higher beings somewhere. And I think all our spiritual feelings stem from that. The truth is that the Greeks had Hercules, right, even as the Norsemen had Thor. And through the ages, we've had heroes similar to them. And in ages past, we had Samson, who is no more than a superhero. And today we have our superhero. We believe in them because we believe in ourselves.
Kirby represents, for me, a watershed artist in comics. Particularly his work in the 60s at Marvel. His work that, to me, restructured the visual superhero. He created a visual language for superheroes, and together he and Stan, I think, created a conceptual world for superheroes that really, everything after that, either takes from it and or comes after it and is deliberately is a bit influenced by it, or deliberately ignores it and does something else. But it's not, well, ignore isn't the right word. You can't ignore it. I think partly that may be because Jack's visual language for that material was so powerful, it blew everything else off the map. It's hard to read just a private detective comic with a guy belting bank robbers when people are moving suns around and you're reaching for the phone and you stretch out of camera shot, like this, in order just to pick the phone up. It did make such a huge difference visually. For me, I think what I have tried to take from Jack, I mean, I look at a lot of Kirby stuff, is the energy. I think nobody really encapsulated the explosive energy within the human figure and within the world of the panel inside the drawing as Jack did.
Look for a salute to the early Kirby Lee superheroes entitled 1963. Alan Moore is writing it, art by Steve Bissett and Rick Veitch, inking by Dave Gibbons and Chester Brown. Quite a lineup. Also, Ty Templeton, who's writing and drawing the Mad Dog comic book to tie in with Bob Newhart's latest TV series, is using the project to pay tribute to Kirby's Biff Bam Pow art style. Jack's been an influence outside of comics as well, and I've been surprised time and again by the people who've told me about Jack's effect on them.
I remember I used to just love reading his comics, you know, especially when I was younger, because he would come up with the most outlandish things, or he was the first comic book writer artist that came along that I was aware of anyway, who could take, you know, the most stagnant title in the world, like Jimmy Olsen comics or something like that, and just turn it on its ear and make it utterly thrilling and exciting. And of course, the interesting thing was, as soon as he left, it just went right back to what it was before. But it was his imagination. He just, you know, I mean, I think he told a good story. I don't think he was a good artist per se, the way I think of fine art, but he was an extremely good storyteller, which I think is more important for comics.
I like, oddly enough, what I like is just the surface of the art, and what doesn't terribly interest me is the storytelling. And with most other people, when they talk about Kirby's work, isn't he such a great storyteller? And but I like that those chunky lines that outline the characters. They gave them a kind of a presence that was really kind of interesting, and they were kind of gnarled, and even the beautiful people that when he tried to drew them had a certain kind of underlying ugliness that I thought was what made him a really interesting comic artist. And you know, so I was very impressed with Kirby's work, as was everyone. But everyone is impressed with it for different reasons.
Jack, you pushed the concept of the alter ego, and then later with the Fantastic Four, you invented superheroes with no secret identity. You fused character with action. You were the first to draw upon the mythical heroes. You and Stan set up the whole Marvel universe. You pioneered superheroes who feel very human emotions and have very human weaknesses. What everyone calls the famous Marvel style of art is very much the Kirby style. So what do you think has been your greatest contribution to comics?
I think the greatest contribution I made in comics is the fact that I helped to build up readership. I think people have accepted me, they accepted my stories, because I think they recognize their own values in those stories. I don't think the average reader believes in fairy tales, and I've never given anybody fairy tales. Yes, I've given fictionalized drama, but this drama is enacted by real people.
So what advice would you offer to the young cartoonist who's just starting out?
They should do what they like to do. I feel that all the young cartoonists today are their own persons. They're individuals, and whatever comes into their minds is valid. And they should take that validity and work it out to their own satisfaction. And they'll find themselves becoming true individuals. And in doing that, they'll value themselves. And valuing yourself is very, very important to your own growth.
I've said that if we could pluck Jack Kirby from comics history, that all the leading lights of comics from the last 20 or 30 years in America would just blink out like Christmas tree lights. Kirby established such a fundamental way of storytelling in terms of layout, in terms of composition, what we're speaking of, which has become virtually invisible because it's so deeply embedded under the surface of so many people working today. It's very hard to detect. I think that greatness covers its own tracks in the sense that those who have the most significant ideas are, of course, the most imitated, and they set up the structures which other people work around. But structures become environments. They become invisible.
And I think that there's Kirby all around us. I have to say that I think in order to mature, we have to try to move beyond and make our own mark. Jack made his mark, but we can't continue to imitate him forever. I don't think that that's the proper legacy for a great talent like Jack's, to simply imitate. I think we should strive to be as original as he was, and to try to make our own empires, of art in our own way in the future.
Jack Kirby, it's very difficult to talk about Jack Kirby because he's so seminal that it's difficult to even nail it. I'd rather mention something personal. I play at times with a band called Seduction of the Innocent. We play at comic book conventions from time to time. And one of our original songs is called King Jack. And it's about Jack Kirby. And one of the great treats was having him in the audience at one of our early performances when we played that song. And also, we played a slow song, and Jack and his wife Roz danced to that. And it was thrilling. I won't attempt to explain it more than that. But to have one of your heroes out there just enjoying the music, and it was a very sweet moment that I know we all appreciated.
What kind of influence have your wife and 4 kids been to you?
Oh, they've been a tremendous influence. They show me that I know true love. And knowing true love, I think, is one of the greatest feelings in the world. And it's something that absorbed my entire being. And in absorbing all of love, I find that I live a wonderful life. You can't have a wonderful life without love. And in loving my own family, my life is even more wonderful. I love my children. I love my relatives. I love my audience. And these are true feelings. I'll never deny them. And I suppose I love everybody.
Well, the feeling is mutual. The proof of that affection is the tremendous support Kirby's received from other comic creators as he reluctantly wages a legal battle to retrieve his artwork from Marvel's warehouse. Jack wants to sell the drawings and leave an inheritance for his children. In 1990, Todd McFarlane made more money for one single issue of Spider-Man, one issue, than Kirby earned in a decade of drawing and writing a dozen titles. Now Jack has a new project in the works for Image Comics entitled Phantom Force, and he's developed a raft of new characters for Topps Comics. He's still going strong at 75 years of age. That makes this his diamond anniversary. And well, Jack is a diamond. Small, strong, brilliant, valuable, and forever. Next week on Second Nature, 2 years ago, a behavioral psychologist named Philip Tungsten set out to prove that inner city street gangs are not nearly as tough as they would have us believe. We'll talk to his widow about his findings.